What it is, what it do, cyber world. It is your girl, the one and only Ash Brown, and this is the Ash Said It Show. Over 1,900 episodes since 2014 and 500,000 streams all around the globe. All of this is on account of you guys, so thank you for all the shares, all the cares. It makes a huge, huge difference, and I know that everyone appreciates the episodes because you've sent me such, great feedback about it. And I appreciate you guys so, so very much. Today's episode is a little different, We're going to touch on something that we don't typically get on, but we are now in September. We are now in Suicide Awareness Month. So I have with us today author of The Suicide Club, What to Do When Someone You Love Chooses Death, the wonderful Alexandra Wyman. Hi, Alexandra.
Hi, Ash. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Alexandra, where in the world are you today?
I live outside of Denver, Colorado.
Ooh.
I mean, I wish I probably could give you a different answer that would sound much better, but I went with the truth. I'm outside of Denver.
Oh, wow. All right. So you've got this new book, this memoir that you wrote, and it was released last November. And I wanted to start off with, what brought you to write this book?
Yeah, so after my husband passed by suicide, I felt very lost in all different ways. But one of the things that I started noticing was it was just really hard for me to access or find resources. There are so many out there, but I didn't know the first clue about what to do for an estate, how to handle anything with going through someone's belongings. And now I have this child that I'm raising by myself. And I started to jot down notes and just think, well, if I'm going through this, what's to say someone else hasn't? And maybe if I can write down some of the things I found that worked for me, it might be able to help someone else not have to go through so much of the hardships that I went through and just trying to find ways to find help.
Yes. Now, as you were going through and writing the book, what was the process like for you? Because now you're a single mom, you're probably working at some point. What was that process like?
It was interesting. I'm not the kind of writer who can just sit down for 3 hours every day and say, okay, I'm going to write. I had Post-it notes. I would have voice memos. And you're right. I was working. I have my child, managing the household now by myself. So any chance that I could, I would write down. If I felt the inspiration, I would just start writing stuff down. And then there were some times where it'd be, 2:00 in the morning, and I would just be typing because I've had some insomnia for a while. And so any time that I could just feel the inspiration and start writing, I would try and find the time to do that.
Did you experience writer's block at any point?
All the time.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely, because I think, it's hard. I'm someone where I like to see where things are going, and there were often times where I'd get some inspiration, write some notes down, and then think, I don't know where I'm going with that. But I would take the opportunity to actually write it, and then as the process went on, found that it was all starting to come together, and that really... It surprised me. I never actually really thought about publishing. And then as it all came together as one full cohesive story, I thought, maybe I actually could publish this. This would be really interesting.
Now, if someone has someone pretty close to them, a loved one, maybe a spouse, maybe a boyfriend, girlfriend, or whoever, a partner, and they see them struggling with their mental wellness, what did you find out about that?
Yeah, so it's so tricky because there's no predictability to this kind of death. There's no way of really knowing that this might be on the horizon unless someone is really forward in telling you. And I'll say that in my experience, the majority of people I've met, it's not that. Someone doesn't come to them and say, this is what I'm dealing with. However, on the flip side, something I've learned along the way is, one, if you're worried about someone and their mental wellness, ask them straight up. Are you thinking of harming yourself? You're not planting the seed for suicide, because if they're already really struggling, it may have already crossed their mind. And the other thing that I find is really find a way to connect. I think connection is something that we've lost a lot, and being able to really find that way to connect. And I'm guilty of this. We're all asked someone, how are you? And, that's our basic question versus saying, how are things going at work? How are things going at your home? And paying attention to what they're saying, and then being able to really forge that connection and create a safe space where someone might be more willing to share if they're struggling.
Wow. And what have you found out about as far as people dealing with after the loss, after that suicide, after that loss, people are still struggling to understand. What did you find about the best way to help someone?
During the aftermath, you mean?
Yes, during the aftermath.
After someone has passed.
Right.
Yeah, I found, so grief is just so interesting and so unpredictable. And I'll say, I find that there are kind of different, I call them different phases, the different ways of working through the immediacy of that type of death. But overall, what I would say is the people that just reached out to me and said, thinking about you, were the ones and who could do that over time. Because there's always that period of time that people are available, they're ready, they want to help, they want to fix. And then they go back to their lives, and us as individuals are still dealt with it. We still have life that we have to figure out and grief that we have to figure out. And our needs are still there, even though everyone else has moved on, which is okay. But I appreciated the people who would just reach out and say, just thinking about you, I'm here for you. If you happen to know if there's something you need, I'm here for you. And that really helped me more than saying, what can I do for you? Because a lot of the time I didn't know. You can't bring him back. That's what I need. So otherwise I don't know, except for bringing food, right? Everyone brings food, and that's helpful.
Definitely helpful. One less thing for you to have to, worry about is, cooking a full-on dinner and meal. So when people come around, that's super helpful. That's really super helpful.
Yes, absolutely.
So when people, how could I say this? Are there any warning signs? I know that, we said that it's really impossible to predict what someone's going through, what they're dealing with, what they're thinking about. But are there any warning signs that suicide may be on this person's mind?
I think it's hard to say if it's on their mind. I would say if someone has a plan, right? If you're really considered, if you've asked someone if they're having suicidal ideation and they say yes, the next step is they do have a plan. And that kind of indicates, if they have a plan, then they're preparing themselves and ready. And that would be something. And that's where, 988, I'm so grateful that 988 exists now. And getting people, if you need to, get someone to a hospital if they're in the immediacy right then and there. Prior to that, and again, this is just off of my own personal experience. I haven't seen a scenario where it's been easy to say, here was the sign, because two people could display the same behavior and one could die and the other one could not. And that's what's so hard about it, is that two people could feel the same way and go in two different directions. I think what I am a big proponent of is when we feel good, because we all have negative things that happen to us. That's life. But when we feel good, that's the time to create good habits around strategies and tools that help us with our stress management, so that when we do have a darker time, hopefully that habit is there, and it makes it a little easier, not easy, but a little easier to actually use one of those tools or strategies to help us get out of that dark place.
I agree with that. And we shared, prior to getting onto our interview, I shared a little bit with you about previous classmates and peers. I've had a number of people take their lives over the years, and it's very difficult not to blame yourself, not to see fault in yourself. What is the best way that you think not to get into that mindset of self-blame, regretful? What is the best way of working through that?
Yeah, it's such a good question and such a hard one, because it's easy. I mean, I still do it. I have found, though, that when we can shift our mindset and look at it, I think that grief and the wanting to save someone and wanting to know what we could have done that comes about when we make the death about us. We should have been there for that person. That's our guilt, which is normal. It's not to say that we actually have the responsibility. It's just, it's completely normal to feel like, how did I not know? How did I not know this person was hurting? How did I not know this is what was on their mind, or that this is what happened? And I feel like when we can shift our mindset to really thinking about the individual, like, this person was in this much mental and emotional anguish that the only thing that they thought that could end their pain was to die. And I think when we can shift our mindset to that, it's easier, I hope, at least for me, that was really helpful. It's easier to have a little bit more compassion and to kind of relinquish some of that responsibility on us to save that person, and to remember, like, it's their choice. It's a horrible choice. It's awful. We want to say, please don't make that choice. Don't do that. But at the end of the day, it is their choice. And to come at it from that more of a compassionate side of, wow, you must have been in so much pain, and to not feel that you could access resources to help you with your pain is immense. That's huge.
Very powerful words. Very, very powerful. Now, ultimately, what do you want readers to get from your memoir?
Oh, it's such a good question. I think at the end of the day, what I really hope, there are two things. One is, let's start having conversations. Let's start, let's bring connection back. Let's put the phones down. Let's have some face-to-face connection and really find ways to feel that we know each other. Because I think that's where people feel seen and can feel that they're in a safe space to be able to share when stuff happens. And let's have those conversations. And the other thing that I hope readers get out of it is, no matter what you're experiencing, this book is not just for anyone who's had a loss by suicide or anyone who's just had a loss. For me, it's, you can get through it. If you're dealing with grief, it does take work. It does take putting one foot in front of the other, and it is absolutely possible. Don't push your feelings away. Embrace them. They're awful. They're horrible, but it is absolutely possible to get to the other side of those. And the grief journey, I'll say, my grief journey is here for me for the rest of my life. It's always going to be here. It's just going to change, and it's going to ebb and flow, but it is possible to keep putting one foot in front of the other and get to the other side.
I love how you phrase that. Perfect. Alexandra, thank you so much for coming through today. We certainly appreciate you.
I've so enjoyed this. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And also, do you want to share any resources that you may have for anyone that may be dealing with suicide and dealing with suicidal awareness for September? Any resources that you want to mention?
Yeah, so definitely. So I have personal ones. So if you go to my website, forwardtojoy.com, there's resources for estate management. There's some one-on-one coaching that's available to help walk through a process to get to that other side of that grief that I was mentioning. And then definitely during this month, if you know someone who's struggling, use 988 and reach out to people. And there are resources. And you can always reach me at alexandra@forwardtojoy.com if you have questions or need some help navigating some of that.
All right. And then the book again is The Suicide Club, What to Do When Someone You Love Chooses Death. It's available now pretty much everywhere books are sold, right? It's pretty much everywhere.
Yes.
Gotcha. Awesome. It's great talking with you, Alexandra. Can't wait for you to come back. I know you're going to have some stuff cooking and working up into the new year, so you are more than welcome back. Would love to chat with you again. And
I would love that.
And I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you so much for all of your love and support. Keeping in mind, anyone to tell you that you can't do what you want to do, you look them square in the face, you tell them, don't believe me. Just watch. Watch what I do. Watch me make it happen. Watch me make history. That's what we're doing this for, the history books. Social media is nice, but real life is so much better. Until next time, you guys.